I'm a Central Florida native born and raised in Sumter and Lake County back when this area was nothing like it is today. Before the subdivisions, before the highways, before everything got cleared out, this place was woods as far as you could see. My grandparents lived on a road that led straight to the Forest Fire Tower, and if you know anything about those areas back then, you know how remote they were. Thick woods, no streetlights, no nearby neighbors, just pine trees, palmettos, and darkness. That's the setting for something that has stayed with me for over 50 years. This happened in the early 1970s. I was just a kid, staying the night at my grandparents' house with my cousin. We were sleeping in the living room, laid out in our sleeping bags on the floor. The house was quiet, no TV, no talking. The only light on was the porch light, which cast a faint glow through the front of the house. Sometime in the early morning hours, right before dawn, I woke up with that feeling that something wasn't right. You know the feeling, like you're being watched. I opened my eyes and looked toward the doorway. And that's when I saw it. Standing there, completely silent, was a huge, man-like figure. It wasn't moving, it wasn't making a sound, it was just watching us. I couldn't scream, I couldn't move. My cousin was awake too, I could feel the tension. We were both frozen in our sleeping bags, staring at this thing, too terrified to even whisper. What made it so disturbing wasn't just its size, it was the way it stood there, calm and still, like it knew we were awake and was observing us. Its head was nearly level with the top of the doorway. If that was a man, then he was massive. This wasn't someone crouching or bending down. This thing was standing upright, filling the doorway. There were no footsteps, no breathing, no movement of any kind. Just this dark, towering figure outlined by the porch light behind it. The encounter probably lasted a minute or two, but when you're a kid frozen in fear, it feels like an eternity. I remember thinking my heart was going to beat right out of my chest, and then, just as quietly as it appeared, it was gone. No sound, no door opening, no footsteps walking away, nothing. Eventually, morning came, and with daylight, the courage to talk about it. But even then, we didn't have words for what we saw. We just knew it wasn't normal, and it wasn't something either of us could explain. Decades have passed since that night. I'm almost 60 years old now, and I've lived a full life. I've seen a lot of things. But I can tell you this with absolute certainty. I will never forget that moment. I will never forget the way it felt to be watched. And I will never forget the size of that thing standing in the doorway. With all the deforestation in Central Florida now, I honestly wonder where creatures like that could even go. But back then, when the woods were endless, it makes you think whatever it was real, and it knew we were there.
What I'm about to share didn't happen just once, and that's why I've never been able to dismiss it. My first encounter happened during deer season in Northern California, high in the mountains. Anyone who hunts out there knows how rugged and remote it is. Steep terrain, thick brush, and miles of country where animals see you long before you see them. We were driving up a mountain road when we crested the top of a hill. As the truck came over, I happened to look down into a clearing below us, and that's when I saw it. At first, I noticed a shape crouched low near some bushes. Something about it immediately caught my attention. It didn't look right. Then it turned its head and looked directly at us. The moment our eyes met, it stood up, and that's when I knew it wasn't a bear. This thing stood upright in one smooth motion, tall, balanced, and unmistakably human-like in form. No bear does that. No animal does that the way this thing did. As soon as it stood, it turned and ran, heading straight for heavy cover. And when I say ran, I don't mean stumbling or awkward. It moved with speed and purpose, disappearing into thick brush where something that big shouldn't have been able to move so easily. I spoke up immediately, but I was shut down. I was told it was a bear, or a trick of the light, or my imagination. But I knew what I saw. Years later, in a completely different area, I had another encounter. Different location, different circumstances, same unmistakable shape, movement, and presence. That's when I stopped doubting myself. Then, a couple of years after that, I had an experience that sealed it for me. I was camping and metal detecting, minding my own business, when something passed by my camp. I didn't see it clearly enough to describe every detail, but I felt it. Heavy footsteps, purposeful movement, the unmistakable sense that something large and intelligent was moving just beyond the light. It didn't charge. It didn't make noise. It didn't want to be seen. And that, to me, was the most telling part. People can argue all they want about bears and misidentifications, but here's something most don't know. Even Fish and Game in Redding has a back room full of evidence related to unexplained encounters. They don't talk about it publicly, but the evidence exists. You don't build a room for something that isn't happening. Looking back now, I understand why hunters, campers, and outdoorsmen are often the ones who have these encounters. We're quiet. We're observant. And we spend time in places most people never go. I've seen one crouched. I've seen one stand. I've seen one run. And I've felt one pass my camp in the dark. At some point, coincidence stops being coincidence. Call it what you want, but I know what I saw.
I want to be clear before I start this story. I'm not someone who goes looking for Bigfoot. I don't chase legends. I don't camp hoping to see something strange. And I definitely don't scare easily. But what happened to me and my son on the night of July 4th, 2025, at Truman Lake near Clinton, Missouri, is something I will never be able to explain away. And it still bothers me. We were staying at a campground near Truman Lake for the holiday weekend. Fireworks had died down, the campground had gone quiet, and most people had turned in for the night. My son and I decided to do some late-night fishing. We've done it before. Night fishing out there is usually peaceful, quiet, and empty. Around 12:30 a.m., we pulled up to the 700 rowboat ramp, just south of the ramp itself, down a dead-end road. I remember thinking how perfect it was. No other vehicles, no voices, no lights. We were the only people there. The moon was out just enough to see the water and the tree line, crickets were going, frogs were calling, and the lake was calm. It felt like a normal Missouri summer night. For about 20 minutes, everything was fine. Then we heard it. At first, it sounded like heavy footsteps, slow, deliberate stomping, coming from the tree line behind us. Not the quick steps of a deer, and definitely not a raccoon. These steps were deep, like something with serious weight behind it. I froze. My son looked at me and whispered, "Dad, do you hear that?" Before I could answer, something hit me hard in the back. I stumbled forward, completely shocked. When I turned around, I saw a rock on the ground behind me, one that definitely wasn't there before. This wasn't gravel kicked up by an animal, it was thrown, and whoever or whatever threw it had force. I shouted into the darkness, thinking maybe it was some drunk idiot messing with us, even though we hadn't seen a single person since we arrived. No answer, just silence. Then another rock came flying out of the trees and skipped across the ground near our feet. That's when the fear really set in. There was no one else fishing, no cars, no voices, no flashlights, nothing. And the throws weren't random. They were aimed at us. The stomping started again, heavier this time, closer. Not running, walking. Like whatever it was, wanted us to know it was there. I grabbed my son and told him we were leaving. As we started packing up, more rocks came flying, hitting the ground and brush around us. Whoever was throwing them stayed hidden in the tree line, just out of sight. And that's the part that chills me the most. If this was a person, they would have shown themselves. If it was kids or pranksters, they would have laughed or yelled. But this thing stayed unseen, using the darkness, controlling the situation. We didn't wait to finish packing properly. We threw everything into the truck, jumped in, and got out of there fast. As we drove away, I looked back toward the trees, and I swear I saw a movement where something tall stepped back into the woods. We didn't speak much on the drive back to the campground. That night, neither of us slept. We talked about it for hours, replaying every sound, every step, every thrown rock. The more we talked, the more it sank in that nothing about that encounter made sense. Animals don't throw rocks. People don't stalk in silence like that, and whatever was out there didn't want us there. I've since learned that Truman Lake has a long history of strange encounters, sounds, footsteps, rock throwing, and sightings that locals rarely talk about openly. I didn't know that before this happened. Now I do. I don't claim to know what it was, but I know what it wasn't. And I know that something intelligent, powerful, and unseen pushed us out of that area that night. We haven't been back to that spot since. And honestly, I don't think we ever will.